When open world games are done right, they can be some of the most immersive, interesting, and wildly imaginative games out there. I'm Falcon, and today on gameranx, we're bringing you the top 15 open world games of 2017. Number 15 is Sea of Thieves, which is a game we've talked about a few times before. It looks really neat. It's essentially a sandbox pirate game, if that makes any sense to you. You either join a crew via matchmaking or invite some friends to have a party together. That's, I think, probably the best way to do something like this, but we'll see. And coordinate essentially everything from piloting the ship, which as you know takes more than just a steering wheel, with treasure hunting, resource management, PvP, and a number of other really cool sounding features. Now this to me seems like it's probably going to be one of those games where it's either really good or the opposite, really bad. But it is rare, they know what they're doing, they've proven that quite a few times in the past, and I have some faith. Number 14 is Dual Universe, which is a game that has the distinction of sounding like the most ambitious thing I've ever heard in my life. They've talked about incorporating elements from games like Minecraft to Space Engineers to Star Citizen to even EVE Online, which, as you know, this creates a pretty wide feature set that they're creating expectations for, so let's hope they don't No Man's Sky this thing. In a lot of ways, it actually does sound like what No Man's Sky made itself sound like, in that there's a single, continuous, undivided universe that all the players inhabit, and you can basically do anything you think of. You can reshape terrain, you can build stuff, you can, even engage in politics if you want, which I'm sure people will. One thing that's really cool is you can build pretty much everything, including your ships, but it's not just building. You can also actually script the ships to create legitimately unique ships. You can build cities, actual functioning cities, and that sounds pretty damn interesting. If this delivers, this is the thing that No Man's Sky claimed it was going to be, and I'm really excited for it, because I wanted that. That was the thing that I wanted. Number 13, Rime looks a lot like what The Witness would have been if it were third person, had an actual character and an actual story, and also borrowed heavily from the visual stylings of Legend of Zelda Wind Waker and Journey. It's essentially you're on an island, there are a lot of puzzles, the island is cursed, and you want to escape from that island, because really nobody wants to stick around for a curse. I don't. That being said, it looks like it has significantly more personality and character than a lot of what that type of game seems to be lately. In some weird ways, actually, for me, creating some feelings of Myst, if you remember Myst. The trailers do something for me that games don't do a lot of nowadays, which is make me feel like how I felt when I saw new platformer commercials for the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis back in the day, with a lot of color and a fantasy setting and weird things that you don't expect. It really does make you feel a bit like a kid in a good way, not in a I'm stuck in the past sort of way, in a I'm excited to explore and discover a way. Number 12 is Sniper Ghost Warrior 3, which is an open world first-person tactical shooter, and is the first in its series to go open world. The developer is also calling it their first AAA production effort, and if the quality of the other Ghost Warrior games is any indication, I would say that's a pretty good thing to hear, on account they're both pretty good games. Now, I think it's important to say that they aren't perfect games by any means. That's why the company's brought in some really big names, like Jess Lebo, who's worked on League of Legends, Far Cry, Guild Wars, and specifically seems to want to make not only a great game, mechanically speaking, but also including the narrative. Number 11, Subnautica is a game where you play somebody who's just crash landed on a water planet somewhere off in space, and essentially you'll have to survive on it. You'll need resources, you'll need a means of defense, you'll need to build places so that you can take shelter in and sleep. A lot of people will say, oh, but I've heard all of that before. The thing is, it's underwater. There will be some land for you to explore, but mostly it will take place entirely underwater, and I think that that's very neat. It's certainly a brand new take on a genre that needed a brand new take. I'm very interested in it. An incomplete version of the game is out on early access now if you want to check it out. It's actually pretty neat, but I have a feeling when they actually launch it's going to be even better. But with any game like this, obviously the most important thing is how well it holds up after time. We'll see about that. Number 10 is Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands, which is a tactical shooter, and I don't think we see enough open world tactical shooters. I do think that's probably going to change this year, but at least we're going to be seeing how it works out. Hopefully well, In addition to being a big open world experiment, Ghost Recon Wildlands kind of takes Ghost Recon back into the realistic world, so to speak, away from the futuristic warfare ideas of Advanced Warfighter and Future Soldier. Now, we've heard to some degree that the typical sort of Ubisoft open world problems aren't there, that this is somehow better than that, but on the other hand, the game is not out yet. There's no way for us to have a full view of that. And there is some very interesting stuff that we've seen that really does not mold in with what I would normally expect from a Tom Clancy game, and not in a bad way. And in a lot of ways, it looks like a sandbox game, which is, in my opinion, very interesting for a Tom Clancy game because they're usually fairly hyper-focused. I got my fingers crossed because I'm really hoping a lot of things are very fresh in 2017, and this is one of them. Number 9, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a JRPG set in an open world, which I think we need more of. I think we were proven that with Final Fantasy 15. It works. I'm happy for it. It's pretty exciting. And the first Xenoblade Chronicles was great. The game's a direct sequel to the other game, but features a new protagonist, as well as a more cartoony art style, which I have to say I think is welcome because it really emphasizes all of the neat colors that I see in the palette. It looks like a sort of subdued but varied palette, which I like. And we technically don't know a whole hell of a lot about the game, but it's coming this year, and the previous one was great, so I expect good things. Number 8 is Gravity Rush 2, which if you've played it, you know it's actually pretty damn good. I've heard some complaints about the camera, and I think they're valid, but outside of that, this is a really, really solid sequel to a game that had a really unique concept. As you might expect from the title, Gravity Rush has combat that centers around being able to flip the gravity up and down. The game is particularly good when it's in nice big open spaces, but there are some minor complaints about what happens if you're in a smaller area. That being said, this really builds on everything the first Gravity Rush did, and it's really, really worth time. I've gotten to play a little bit of it, not a lot. It's been out a couple days, but I would be shocked if it doesn't hold up very well, and if this series doesn't build upon this one too. Number 7 is Agents of Mayhem, which takes place in the Saints Row universe, specifically taking place after the Recreate Earth ending of Gat Out of Hell, and I've seen it described a few times as sort of a single-player take on the idea of Overwatch, basically a powers/hero-based shooter, except for with a story and not based around competition. I find this very intriguing because, as we know, the Saints Row series is very funny. It's also very entertaining for other reasons besides just funny. It happens to be charming at basically all times, and early indications show that this game will likely be similar. Number 6 is State of Decay 2, which is a zombie survival game that adds a few new ideas to the mix that has me pretty interested. First, it's a co-op game. It is not specifically a solo game, although you can play it that way if you like. I like the idea of teaming up with 3 of my friends to play one of these types of games, and actually having it work out in a manner where our cooperation isn't forced into the mix by us. The game is designed around communities, in other words, groups of survivors while surviving, and it really looks a lot more varied than the original game, to me at least. Number 5 is Crackdown 3, which is a third-person action-adventure game that we've heard about for a very long time. One of the main reasons why I think people still care about it is that it has fully destructible environments in multiplayer that take advantage of cloud computing. Now, that sounds like a mouthful, but what it means is, you know how you could destroy environments in the Red Faction games? Think about that, but not limited in any way. Pretty much everything is destructible, and in a multiplayer setting, I think that that's possibly one of the most interesting and exciting developments in a game yet. Hopefully Crackdown 3 lives up to everything we've heard of it, because it's been a long time, and we've heard a lot of very good things, and 2016 was the year of that kind of game being a disappointment, so let's hope that's not continued in 2017 with Crackdown 3. Number 4 is Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which, let's just go ahead and say it, looks like one of the best Zelda games ever. And I know we always say that about every Zelda game, but it's only been true like twice. I would be pretty shocked if this wasn't a time this was true. This really looks like the next step in Zelda in a positive way. And the thing that I particularly like about it is its integration of technology. Are we looking at a post-apocalyptic Zelda? A place in which a technological society actually developed and was destroyed? If so, how did Link get there? The other thing the game does really well that we've seen so far is taking the styles that they came up with for Wind Waker and developing them much further into a very, very unique, very cool looking concept that I think is going to translate over to open world really well. Number 3 is Mass Effect Andromeda, which can be best described as open galaxy, because it's going to be a game that exists with many of its own open worlds that the players can travel between and explore and obviously take on missions. Although we don't really know exactly what the overarching plot is, we know that it's a new galaxy specifically because, well, everything seems to be going haywire, and the game is built on Frostbite, which is obviously a really good engine that looks incredibly realistic and delivers great performance. I'm personally very excited for this game. I love BioWare. I love the other Mass Effect games. I love Dragon Age. And you know what? I love the Frostbite engine as well. It's pretty much contributed to the overall quality of any game that it's been featured in, and it's difficult for me to imagine a scenario where Andromeda is actually not great. It may not live up to the other Mass Effect games, I don't know, but it's gonna be good. Number 2 is Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a very cool game. I can say right off without even having experienced it, because if you see a trailer, you're like, oh, that's a good idea. That's actually one of the big distinctions this game has over almost every other game still on the way. You just immediately go, wow, what a cool idea. Having a post-apocalyptic game where you have hunters and dinosaurs, but the dinosaurs are robots, makes all these implications that I think just seem really cool. And if they're all delivered on in a way that contextualizes the world, unless the gameplay is crap, which it really doesn't look to be, I have a difficult time imagining this game not being awesome. And finally, number 1 is Red Dead Redemption, which, let's just all say this right now, I don't think anybody wants to wait for. That game is going to be so good, because as we all know, Rockstar does such a great job developing their open world tech to such a great degree, and also having been responsible for the non-linear story between different characters in the previous Grand Theft Auto, and the first Red Dead just being such a damn good game. There's a reason I made a story summary that took us through that entire trip, is because it's enjoyable as hell. I'd recommend you'd watch that video and watch more Game Ranks in the future, because we're going to cover Red Dead Redemption 2 as much as we can. What's your favorite open world game coming up? What are you looking forward to the most? Let's meet in the comments and talk about that. If you've enjoyed this video, please click like. That helps us a whole lot. And if you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. That ensures you get our new videos, which go up every day. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.